Let's move on. Let's talk about equity theory. Equity theory predicts that a good relationship is one in which a person's ratio of costs and rewards is equal to that of a person's partner, based on Adam's notion of distributed justice, that people think and act so that rewards are distributed in accordance with their efforts. Equity is thought of a fairness in the distribution of costs and rewards. For example, I cook the dinner, you do the dishes. Equity theory focuses on determining whether the distribution of resources is fair to both relational partners. Propositions and concepts of equity theory. ET suggests we seek relationships in which our ratio of costs and benefits is the same as our partners. ET proposes that individuals who perceive themselves as either under-rewarded or over-rewarded will experience distress, and that this distress leads to efforts to restore equity within the relationship. There are three types of inequity in a relationship. First, you consider whether your ratio of rewards to cost is equal to your partner's ratio. For example, if one person contributes to a great deal to the relationship and the other contributes little, then even if the first person may feel the relationship is rewarding, inequity occurs and yields in dissatisfaction. Second, you consider your exchange relationship that you and your partner have with the third individual. For example, when you and your classmate engage in a group project and you do most of the work and your partner does little, but you both receive the same grade, you will perceive the distribution of the rewards as unfair. Third, you compare your relationship to others in similar circumstances. When individuals find themselves participating in equitable relationships, they become distressed. The more inequitable the relationship, the more distress individuals feel. According to equity theory, both the person who gets too much and the person who gets too little feel distressed. Furthermore, underbenefited. What is underbenefited? Giving more to the relationship than you are receiving may feel angry or humiliated. Overbenefited. Receiving more from the relationship than you are giving may feel guilt or shame. There are, of course, ways of managing those types of situations, and we're going to look closely at them. One may restore equity by changing your actions, changing your perceptions of rewards and costs, turning your costs into rewards. It's cognitive distortion. There are ways of managing inequitable relationships. Let's discuss. You may restore equity by changing your actions, changing your perception of rewards and costs, turning your costs into rewards, and simply ending the relationship. When we talk about changing your actions, for example, you may not put so much effort into your relationship or convince your partner into putting more effort. Changing your perception of rewards and costs, turning your costs into rewards, you might change your attitude. I have to do groceries all the time, but it's good exercise for me and I can always buy things that I like. This is changing your perception. Ending the relationship, well, that's clear, I guess. How do we apply ET theory? Apart from personal relationships, ET has been widely applied to business settings, to dyadic relationship between employee and employer. Among other justice theories, equity theory was first who asserted that employees seek to maintain equity between the inputs that they bring to a job and the outcomes that they receive from it, again, the perceived inputs and outcomes of others. Until now, we have discussed different aspects of social exchange theory, but of course there are pros and cons of SAT. For example, there are ongoing debates that talk about the degree to which SAT can account for human behavior, and there are common critiques. People are not necessarily self-serving. People are not as rational as SAT seems to portray them. Predictive value. SAT is a post-positivistic, logical, empirical of social scientific approach and largely rests on propositions that can be tested. Its primary purpose is to predict and explain behavior. As such, it has a fairly high predictive value. Heuristic value. SAT prompted further investigations and generated extensive amounts of research, which is good. Practical value. SAT has been useful in understanding social relationships in general. There are a lot of situations, wide and small, that we are discussing. Practical value. Social exchange theory has been useful in understanding social relationships. For example, why people may stay in abusive relationships, no alternatives, or why they choose to disclose personal information to some people and conceal it from others. Cost and benefits ratio recently has been applied to study family dynamics, for example, cost and benefits of adaptation. Now we have finished to discuss main aspect of social exchange theory, and we'll look into a detailed case study.